Oh my goodness, I feel like I just had a baby. I just finished doing, setting up the release for my band, Dilf USA. We've got a new single coming out. It's really a great one. It's called We Gave an Alligator Mushrooms. It's an excellent video, fun, and the song is, I think, world-changing. I mean, or that's what it's meant to be anyway. Your mileage may vary, but you should check it out. It's going to be premiering tomorrow at 6:30 California time, and we're having a party tomorrow, and we're doing a whole thing. So it's going to be super fun. We have a whole bunch of funny videos. You should check them out. But it always feels like such a thing, like, the final version of the song, the final version of the video, sending them out. Hopefully the song will be out shortly after that. I mean, I set it up for like a 24-hour release, but usually it takes a couple weeks. So we'll see how long it takes before the song gets out online. But if you look up Dilf USA on Spotify and wherever else where you listen to music, you'll find some great tunes, fun, pop rock, alternative rock. This is almost like a reggae song. It's super fun though. And for Christmas, there's a song that we released a year ago called Countdown to Christmas. That's awesome too. You should check that out. Check out the video. Anyway, I'm super excited today to continue our conversation about the law of attraction, or the law of attracting creation, as I like to think of it. But I know it says in the title, right, or I'm going to write it in the title, the meaning of life. So without making like too big a deal of that, let's just get that out of the way. What is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is giving and receiving, push and pull, change and rest, creation and destruction, hot and cold, polarity. What we've been learning about this whole time, right from the beginning. Everything is one, everything's a mind, and everything's polarized. And that means that ultimately the way for you or anybody is to get into the flow of the giving and receiving of the universe. A big lesson for me as I opened myself up to spirituality was that I was not open to receiving in a lot of ways. I was very eagerly ready to give, but I didn't like the idea of receiving. And some of this is because I'm the eldest son, and as I'd seen it sort of portrayed, it was like the eldest son must be perfect and always show up and do everything right. And so to some degree I felt like, I wasn't expected to be helped. I was expected to have my shit together. And I've always tried to be that, and I do have my shit together. So often I've found myself at times when I've needed help going, this is ridiculous. I have my shit together. Why, how is this such a problem for me? I shouldn't be in this position. But these challenges were opportunities for me to ask for help, to ask the universe to help me, to receive. And receiving is very important. If you want to be in the flow of the universe, you must give and receive. The best relationships are friendships or romantic relationships where the romantic partner makes you feel like, makes you feel like you're giving them something, you're offering them something, and that they're getting something from you. If you don't feel like you're giving them anything special and important, then it's not really a deep relationship. And often, like in a friendship, say you're the only one who's doing the giving and you're not receiving anything, well, they may feel like you're not listening to them and so many different things, because you should or could be receiving something. In any situation, I've been in plenty of situations before where, like, the lesson of me being in the situation was that I shouldn't keep putting myself in this kind of situation, because I was making a certain choice to do something that would get me into a situation. But then in that situation, I'd have to deal with the people that I was dealing with, and maybe they weren't my type of people or whatever it was. But I've been fortunately good about, not meaning to fucking pat myself on the back, apologies, but I'm good about trying to get the best of it, get the best of them, get the best of the situation, even if the overarching lesson is, all right, you don't want to hang out at this club or you don't want to hang out with these people, but what is there to be had here? Because there's always kind of dual meaning in everything. The universe generally knows the choices we're going to make. Like I said, there's a few choices that are really pivotal and, could go either way. But most of the time, because of the ebb and the flow of the universe, we're sort of set on courses and destined to fuck up this way or destined to succeed that way. And, we're going to end up where we're going to end up. So they kind of like know. But the ebb and flow is fucked up when you're not giving or you're not receiving. I was a big giver and I was fucking things up because I wasn't willing to receive. And sometimes that can just be keep making somebody feel comfortable in a conversation and like listening to them and, receiving what you can, getting what you can from various situations. I used to go to classes for voiceover. And at the time that I was going to the classes, the motivation was a little bit less the classes and a little bit more getting opportunity to get in front of producers and people who were doing this kind of thing, booking sessions, booking gigs and whatnot. And I wanted to be on their radar and I wanted them to see how good I was, essentially. However, it's also a class and, there's something to learn. But I'd been doing it for a while, so I could have taught my own class by the point that I was taking these classes. And oftentimes, I would kind of open my mouth and say a couple things that I thought needed to be said. Like, maybe sometimes it was something the producer wouldn't really know, and I'd say, well, I've kind of found that X, Y, Z, just because I knew it was information that was good for the other people in the class to have. And, I'm in the class and I want them to get their money's worth and I want them to succeed in voiceovers. And I really believe we can all succeed and that we don't have to think if they succeed, I won't succeed. It's like this bullshit. But the classes, it was largely going over stuff that I'd spent like 20 years almost at that point. And I mean, more so, just from studying comedy as a child and then studying music. And I was in the Florida Singing Sons in 3rd, 4th grade, learning how to sight read music and stuff. So learning how to speak, copying my dad. My dad was a voiceover actor as well, which is kind of a little bit of the inspiration for getting into it. Plus Batman the Animated Series and what's the lead guy's name? Blanking on him. But love him, Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy and kind of Mark Hamill, and I thought it'd be great to do voiceover and just be able to hide behind the microphone because I'm a little shy, despite appearances, and you'll see the Dill videos and stuff. But it takes a lot for me to kind of do that stuff, and I have to flick on a switch to kind of put away my sensitivity to being judged in whatever level for being strange, and but then I can go and I can act a fool and have a good time. Anyway, this is all to say that I had to learn, and you're going to have to learn to receive. You're going to have to learn to give if you're not giving. Generally speaking, I'm pretty giving in my overall approach to my existence. And I thought that was enough. So, and you may think that's enough, but receiving, and there's a lot of vulnerability in receiving. You got to put away your pride. You got to put away your ego. Receiving is very, very important, and that's why I'm kind of talking about like all these things because it all ties to like getting past. Like, oh no, I'm sleeping in my car. I don't have a place to stay. Oh, what does this say about me? Oh no, I missed a month of child support. I couldn't pay my taxes. Couldn't pay a ticket. Oh, does this mean I'm a loser? And we all have different frame rates for what it means to be a loser. You might be like, born rich and you're like, oh man, I've only got $1 million. Shit, I'm a loser. And then for somebody else, it's like, I had to move from the projects into a mobile home. I'm a loser. And other people are listening to this on their phone outside in the cold, and they really know what I'm talking about. But there's a range of things here that we think are the worst and the best, and often, depending on how focused we are on those things being a big deal, is how likely they will come to fruition. My father and my mother, my dad was really great at painting pictures, beautiful canvas pictures of like his life and his journey to be a rock star, what he had to do, his wife and her journey, and beautiful stuff. If you go read my dad's book, there's plenty to learn from it. And he's a great storyteller. But it was interesting within that story was the visualization for the blueprint of his life. Like, he told this whole story and brought this whole thing together of like, it's this and it's going to be this and I'm a rock star. He used to go out on stage and he would disappear before the show, disappear after the show. You would never see him because you never see the rock star. He's backstage, and then he disappears after the show, and that's the thing. He's a mysterious figure. And this was a lot of like visualization and shit that he did to like really turn himself into something and turn everything into something. And you hear about people like Jim Carrey who did similar things. He wrote a check for himself for $20 million or whatever else and put it in his pocket, right? So you've probably heard various things like this. There's a cool story with the guy who voiced Miles Morales in the Into the Spider-Verse animated film, which if you've never seen, is really beautiful. And he had a crazy visualization of like, I am this character, this is my role, like whatever, like long before the role ever showed up in front of him. And power to him for using these tools in a real way. And you'll hear plenty of stories like this. But my father's story was so strong, and it created a sort of destiny for me a little bit that I wanted to avoid, which then, as Job teaches you in the Bible, everything that you most feared has come to visit upon me, which was, he basically had a moment in time where he fell from grace and everything fell apart, and he went back to riding a bicycle to work and working for his brother at a casket company and putting flyers on cars in the parking lot and getting recognized by fans and just kind of wigging out a bit of just like the humbling that had taken place or whatever. And I, without knowing it, very viciously sort of like strove to not have that period occur in my life because I was sort of warned that it probably would, or that it would. And of course it did anyway, because what I most feared came to pass. And I can't say I spent like a lot of time dwelling on it, but I put a lot of energy into that's not going to happen. And ultimately that's not going to happen is a backwards prayer, as we've learned on other episodes. You want to be like, it's like this, not it's not like this, or you can't have the double negative, the negativity of like, it hasn't rained. God, please let it rain. Please let it rain is an inherent, and it's not rained. Thank you, God, it has rained. I have faith. I know it has rained. Thank you, God. I have not had to go through the difficulties that my father and my mother have had to suffer through. Thank you, God. I am on my own path of great, success, and thank you, God. There's no need to humble me in this way. Granted, on some levels, I guess I clearly did need to be humbled. You know what? I'm going to give myself some credit here and say I didn't really exactly, but for a richer, deeper, that much more empathetic understanding and deeper understanding and meaningful understanding of the journey here on planet Earth, I believe that this was very, positive and good for me. And I do believe that I've been able to graduate. I've entered into this fifth dimensional work, and that's what I'm like sort of on the back end of right now. And so much of that was just like, again, the correspondence that we talked about in other episodes. Go back and listen to the other episodes. A coming back around again to a similar sort of group of lessons that I had to go through to get through the fourth dimension into this fifth dimensional consciousness. And there's a lot of ways to talk about this, so forgive me if I'm saying it in a way that doesn't make sense to you or whatever, but and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how I think of this. But suffice to say, like, third level consciousness is sort of like where human beings are hanging out, generally. And a fourth level consciousness is a love consciousness, sort of forgiving everybody, letting go of all, hate, spite, whatever. And then fifth level consciousness is a deepening of that love in sort of a principled and more wise way, because it's sort of a malfunction that still exists in the fourth dimension is a love that's so deep that it leads you to dysfunction. It leads you to doing too much, self-sacrifice, hurting yourself, like I had been doing previously. So I went through these mainline bits of getting over hate and resentment and like really forgiving people in ways, because I would forgive people, and then I would realize there was another way in which I hadn't forgiven them, some sort of layer to it that I was holding on to or something. But there was a moment in time where I was made to realize that I had really legitimately like forgiven everybody in a real loose way. And one of the last ones was my father. And I thought I had forgiven him a whole bunch years and years earlier. But there was a small thing, but wasn't that small, that I was holding on to. And it was just like a little bit of spite. I'm frustrated that you don't see this my way or understand, where I'm coming from. So I'm going to show you. And that was I'm going to show you was something that my father used to great effectiveness to succeed with Twisted Sister, to become a rock star. For those of you who don't know, my father's D. Snider from Twisted Sister. He had a list. He had a real list of people that he's like, I'm going to fucking show this guy, and I'm going to fucking show this guy. And that is an energy that you can cultivate and you can use to great success. It's very damaging to you, in a lot of ways. And I don't necessarily recommend that. And I was trying to get away from that. But I realized on some level I had adopted it towards him, where I guess it seemed most appropriate. And it wasn't like all encompassing. It was just sort of subtle. I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to show you this. I hadn't like written him off or anything. But when I got rid of that, I'm not doing this to show you anything. I'm doing this stuff because I love this, and this is what makes me happy. If I show you anything, I hope it's only in a positive way, and I don't want to rub anything in your face. I love you and I forgive you, and it's no big deal. Having a disagreement or some shit. And shortly after that, I had this really deep meditation where if I'm being honest, I had an energetic boot kind of come on to my left leg. My leg kind of like lifted up in the air. And, granted, this was probably something I could have stopped if I wanted to. I don't get in the way of these energies when I go to meditate, and I'm opening myself to, positive energies, connecting to various, not like demonic spirits or anything, very simple ones, my guides, God probably, a very, very limited amount. But I got immediately into a pretty deep meditation, and my leg lifted into the air, and I felt this energetic boot come on to my leg, kind of like the way in the Matrix and Neo, like the things go down his mouth, except it was starting on my leg, and it came up like my whole body. And while I was doing it, my master guides, they started saying congratulations, and I said, in my head, I said, like, for what? Because like it wasn't an immediate like, I think I might have went to bed the night that I had this realization about my dad, but it was like the next day after a long day of work or whatever, I laid down to meditate, and I had this really deep meditation. So I was just sort of like, what are you talking about? Because they were like applauding me. They were like, yay, good job, you did it. And I was like, what did I do? And they said, you've graduated into the fifth dimension, which I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who basically had a very similar experience shortly after I had my experience. And I was told at the time, and I say this with no like ego or anything, but like, for the record, and in case I don't remember in the future, they had said that like I had done some good work, and that I had opened up a door that hadn't quite been opened yet by anybody for a number of reasons, and I don't know at all if it all had to do with this forgiveness thing, because there's a lot of different angles to, moving, opening a door for fourth dimensional whatever or something like that, and and I don't know why it was that they said it was of significance that my configuration, whatever it is, I was able to open this door, and they told me that I was opening a door that other people were going to go through. And it was very interesting to me because I met like a best friend just like a month later, and he and I got real close real quick, and we ended up having a conversation. I started talking about the thing, and I said, and my leg rose up, and I just started getting this like boot just kind of came onto it, and he said, on your left leg. And I said, yeah, on my left leg. And he was like, the same thing happened to me just recently. And so it was very, very interesting, to be told these things, and then to see that, and and I, ego. Well, I guess there's some ego in. I hope that that's true, because I so would hope I would so hope that any of the fucking difficult work that I've had to do spiritually in order to like get myself to this place, because it hasn't been easy. It's not fun. It's really just like fucking lonely and harrowing and scary, and I kind of don't even recommend it to people, other than like just like open your mind, open your mind, and like don't cling to things. Try to connect to your intuition, and enjoy the now, enjoy every moment, and because things are really, everything's meant to progress, and consciousness is going to progress, and the things that matter now are really, they're not going to matter anymore. And that's the scary thing about growing your consciousness to a certain degree. You get to these places where conceptually, just like what you left behind, like like it's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter to the place that you're going to go, where consciousness is going to go. It's sort of frightening. It's just sort of how does everything that I love fit into this? And of course it does in so many ways, but it's complex, and it's hard to sort of understand. It's easy to understand sort of this infinite spiral, and then it goes off to places that you can't quite see anymore. And and I've talked about this a little bit before, but if you really want to be able to go into psychedelic experiences, if you listen to the work of Terence McKenna, and you're going to go do some Superman mushroom doses or something like that, or go do ayahuasca, you really need to go into the situation and attempt to put down your taboos. And what I mean by taboos is, if you have religious taboos, anybody who's not, saved by Jesus is going to hell. If you have taboos about sex, and not to say that any of this is right or wrong, but a taboo that you might have about sex, like incest, to a point where you might be like grossed out by the idea of incest, grossed out by the idea of gayness. Anything that sort of like gives you the heebie-jeebies, that's sort of a fear reaction. I don't want to be near that. I need to get away. These are taboos. We're taught all these things, and big emphases are put on these taboos, something like cursing. Don't do that. And, some people, when they hear a curse word, they just, all the spines on their neck go up. They have to tell you. They have to correct you. They have to adjust this thing. And because for them, it's like they can't handle it. And when you go into a psychedelic experience, they basically, there's a door that is kind of always being opened to real reality. And real reality is just a mental hologram that there's no good or evil, there's no wrong or right. There's sort of an exception to every rule that you could possibly imagine. For one reason or another, there's an exception. And, you see it in the animal kingdom, plenty of exceptions, say in sexuality or whatever other things that go on sometimes. And, of course, across species and various, doing things that to you are just like, what? But for them, it's okay. And this taboo thing is a huge wall for your average person when you start coming up on some mushrooms or coming up on some ayahuasca. And depending on how strong your taboos are, you're going to put down some anchors, you're going to put down some stakes. But if you can keep yourself open, the reason why I've been able to really cross a really wide threshold with the psychedelics, in addition to the fact that I've come to understand that I've practiced this as a soul in a lot of other lifetimes, so I have a lot of other practice from other lives that have accumulated into this one in a positive way, where when I connected with these substances, I was able to get the benefit of the learning that I did at other times. So, and I don't even know precisely what that learning is in a lot of cases. There are some things that I could tell you that, like, I know, I understand, from from these things, little processes that I'm doing. I can't think of a good one to share, but suffice to say, the taboo thing is sort of the largest benefit. If you can really go in open-minded about everything and just sort of understand that there's sort of an exception to every rule and nothing is necessarily wrong or right. A lot of the things that are in place here are in place because we're a mind, we're a collective consciousness, and we've decided some things together. And we could decide other things together, which is why things are a bit more immovable, amorphous than we generally realize they are. So, without further ado, let's get into more of the law of attraction stuff. How are we attracting things into our life beyond using the meaning of life and being a part of the giving and receiving process? So let's see. My first note here is other people's perspectives are relative to ours, and we can learn so much from these opposing perspectives if we learn to not take the information personally, I think is what I was writing. If we can learn to not take information personally, there is wonderful things that we can learn about ourselves and about other people. People are always speaking to you from where they are coming from. Somebody who's really uncomfortable with curse words, like I said, they're just going to react to, oh man, what would I do to myself if I said that curse word? I'd be yelling at myself to high heaven. Don't you say that curse word. You're not supposed to say that. That's a bad word. Probably something that your mother told you or your father told you, whoever, had ingrained in your brain, and now you repeat that thing over and over. So realize that people are speaking about themselves kind of always. They're always speaking from themselves, from the perspective of, where they're living. Green and red can't lose sight of themselves. Don't change color. Don't turn brown. Never learn your color sucks. People should really think about themselves as unique colors. And they should not mix their colors with the other colors and change who they are fundamentally. Becoming a more balanced version of yourself, becoming a more balanced version in your interactions with the universe and interacting with the universe in a respectful manner, recognizing that all is one, all is mind, and, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because you're just hurting yourself. That plus you behaving authentically is the answer. That's it. And the universe will balance you more and more over time as you come to realize other things and your consciousness grows and whatever else. But you're never supposed to realize, like, red sucks and red is not as good a color as green. Like, there is a fucking person, plenty of people with plenty of favorite fucking colors all over planet Earth who will argue otherwise why this other color is the best. None of the colors should feel bad about being the color that they are. We don't want, even if you don't love orange, you don't want to lose orange. We like all the colors. Part of the reason why we like red is because it's kind of like orange, but it's red. So that I really like that metaphor. In imagine a world where like we made green feel bad for not being red. Fucking green, you're not red, man. You're just not as good. But like green, it's fundamental. You're fundamental. We are all fundamental. We're all fundamental building blocks of this universe, where it's fundamentally important that we all balance ourselves and recapitulate ourselves with the infinite consciousness of God in one way or another. And it's the same dance for us all. And same dance for us all, meaning you are me and I am you. Eventually I get to where you're at. Eventually you get to where I'm at, depending on if you're going forward or backward, or who. I'm not even sure if forward or backward has much fucking meaning either. It's really it's some next level shit, my friends. I think forward and backward have a little bit of meaning on the other side of things in terms of the beginning of the consciousness developing itself. But then at a certain point in time, once you get into these physical things, the forward and backward thing becomes very meaningless. So, thinking you're going to get sick or thinking you don't, someone afraid of being arrested may try to tell you, say not to speed, thinking you're a criminal. Thinking that you're a criminal because you got a ticket or you sped, feeling certain ways. We talked about this on the last episode. I listened to it before I did this, so I tried not to like double conversate about anything, but I didn't necessarily go through my notes and get rid of anything that was double here, so there might be a couple things that get said twice. Of course, everybody knows somebody who thinks they're going to get sick all the time, and of course they do. And then there's other people who's like, I never get sick. And of course, they get sick sometimes, but they go right back to going to never get sick. And generally speaking, they don't. Don't put possible reality in other unconscious beings' minds. I talked about this last time about, say you had a boyfriend and you were scared he was going to cheat on you and he had no thought in his mind about cheating on you, but just having that in your own mind could tip him over in the right situation. And I gave you like a better example of like, say you've actually said this to him a bunch of times. You've accused him worse a bunch of times. Now he gets an offer and he's like, well, I'm going to be accused anyway. So what the hell? Might as well. Okay, so like you see a situation there, like, that's a little bit more logical than just the energy doing it by itself. But make no mistake, the energy can do it by itself. Balancing masculine, feminine for the sake of attraction is really about balancing your level of action and rest, or really your levels of giving or receiving. Yeah, think about like how attractive it is when you're like over eager for like a girl or something like that. It's the thing that like they don't like, you play hard to get is like the thing that people tend to do. I'm not really like that myself personally. When people played hard to get with me, I was always like not into it. But to a certain degree, there is a level of over eagerness that is too much. A self-aware, balanced love and affection and availableness is all that's needed. You don't want to be doing too much. You are balancing yourself for the sake of balancing yourself, to give yourself the best life you can. You are bringing supportive realities into your reality who will lift you up as you will lift them up, hopefully. And give and receive from them in the relationship. But really about balancing the level of action and rest. But yeah, action and rest is what's getting balanced. So, a lot of people have guilt about resting. I do. My girlfriend does. I know plenty of people who do. My family kind of definitely put that in the thing, the idea of like resting. No, you can't rest. Action. Some of you have anxiety about action. I have anxiety about some action. There's certain actions that if I feel like I don't really know what I'm doing, I'll like procrastinate forever. because I was like, I don't really know what to do, and won't take action. The action rest, the giving, receiving, comes back around to the meaning of life, which is why I decided to make that kind of the topper for this episode. Action and rest, giving and receiving, that is always what you're balancing, basically. All right, giving and receiving, the meaning of life, we talked about that. If blocked in some areas of giving, you can't give empathy or compliments, or you can't receive it. This will affect the journey on the way to what you want. Yeah, that's another level that is really wonderful, being blocked in, being unable to give sympathy or to give compliments. This is all, a lot of people demonstrate an inability to give compliments to me sometimes. I mean, it drives me kind of, I'm like such a people pleaser, and I'm pretty good at what I do, but being good at what you do kind of doesn't always rub people the right way. So often it kind of rubs people the wrong way, and they get kind of annoyed with it, which is aggravating, because like I do it like to please people, make people happy, or at least that was a motivation or main motivation for a long time. And I mean, still it's a big part of why I do it. I like to make people happy with what I do. To get compliments, few and far between, and then often get compliments that would go something like, well, I know you know this already, but this is good, or something, which I was always really insecure. I didn't know it already. There's probably some talented and nice person in your life who doesn't really get a lot of compliments because they're intimidating a lot of people, and also sometimes people, it's like innocent that they don't give compliments. They think that like, oh, I don't want to tell them something they already know. But really, people, artists, especially, we generally are like working for an audience and stuff, and we thrive on compliments. It's very hard for people to give compliments a lot of times. So you kind of give up on it. You're like, all right, fuck it. But of course, the more like the situation that I was in, you could say, I created that exact situation, and that I wanted compliments, so I couldn't get them, because what I most wanted, what I most feared that I might not get compliments, was visited upon me, and a new reason for why they might be visited upon me came up. At the same time, I think when these things come up, they do demonstrate a thread within society that's going on of, we're not always super supportive of our friends to succeed, because what does that say about me if they're bigger than me? Like, scale of like yourself is a big thing within society, and maybe I'll do an episode on scale one day. I'll make a little note of that, scale, because it's really like what they don't want you to know about scale. So many fucking things. Okay, so where are we here? Put your mask on here first. Put your mask on first. Yeah. Get yourself into balance. Bring yourself into this giving or receiving. Get into the flow of the universe. If you so many of the people like me, we're overachievers on the trying to give ourselves to causes and give ourselves to ideals and art and whatever it might be, and it's wonderful. And I really admire everybody who does that. That's who I wanted to be. I thought that was the way to go. I thought that was the best way to be, but it's not. It's exhausting, and it's overextending, and you need to find a balance in how much you're giving and how much you're receiving. Put your mask on first. The power of agreement. It says in the Bible, when two people on earth decide something is true on earth, God will make it true in heaven. And there's a more science fiction-y way to explain this. We're living in a matrix, a virtual reality computer program that is ultimately guided by the conscious mind of God that we are a part of. Well, one mind by itself is sort of up against the many, but two minds in agreement really create some magic. When you can really get on the same page with somebody and believe together, that can change your health, can change the health of your partner, Say, hey, Kathy, you got cancer? Come to me. We're going to agree together. You don't have cancer. You don't have cancer. You're fine. We're going to live a long life together. Let's plan some trips. Let's visualize everything. Oh, thank you, God, you don't have cancer. This is amazing. You and I have agreed on this together. We agree. We believe this together. Yeah. And if you guys can really hold that vibration, hold that faith, opportunities are going to come up for you to take action. Maybe you'll meet a new doctor who specializes in whatever, or maybe miraculously you'll eat some food that makes it all go away somehow because it's super acidic and you never had it before. I don't know. I'm just saying there's some fucking way to do it. We were talking last episode, don't put up walls to even the most insane shit. Insane shit is possible in our reality because it's made of consciousness. The more insane is just sort of a little bit further away because it's the furthest stuff away from what people can imagine. Science fiction magazines and fantasy and whatnot, like it can teach us to imagine a certain level of things, and then there's like some other levels that people who are really savvy and creative can start to think of beyond some of these things. But real big paradigm shifts can be very jarring, and they can seem completely impossible. But again, you don't want to put the possible reality in others' unconscious. You don't want to set them say, yeah, it could be terrible. Let's go cheat on me. We want good agreements. Perpetual opportunity will keep coming if you never give up. Eventually, you can get one. Reincarnating the drowning man. Reincarnating the drowning man. Yeah, in our reality, opportunity is going to keep coming. It's really up to you to be able to recognize these things and open yourself up to the things that were blocking you from getting things that you wanted yesterday. But the opportunities will keep coming. The only commonality between all successful people is they never gave up. So don't you give up either. The system is cranking. It's going to work out everything it wants. You want Star Wars? We're going to get more. Where there's energy for more will come. Just don't give up and believe, and try to improve your ability to work with this mental system that I'm showing you. This system of visualizing, of focusing on what you want, and that what you want is already here. I have what I want. I'm so grateful, and I'm so faithful. And you're going to fall out of that over and over again probably before you ever get what you want. But if you just stick on with the things and just keep adding to the picture of the things that you have and that you want, after a while, you're going to sink into a knowing. And I'm telling you this from a place of knowing. I know. I've been dealing with fucking financial difficulties for ages now. But I know it's over. It's done. I have oodles of money, and there's many times that I've said this in the past, and on some levels I was feeling very shaken about it and nervous about it and was thinking about it so much or whatever, and I don't think about it at all anymore. And I and even though so much of this excess isn't in my hand this second, I know it's there. I know it exists. I know it's around the corner now, too, because I've never felt so faithful and so in alignment as I've slowly gotten myself into the right mind about all these things. Yeah, so keep on keeping on. Don't give up on any of this. And that's the thing, with the visualization and the mental effort, just fucking keep going. Only thing about the fucking successful people, they never gave up. 2 chances, inspired action. Oh, yeah. I like to say that God generally gives you 2 chances. I told that joke about the 2 boats and a helicopter, but generally speaking, it's more like a boat and then a helicopter. And if you don't notice, then there's like a next cycle when you'll get another 2 heads up about it. You won't get the 3. The 3 is like for the babies. 2 is for the wise man. So, generally speaking, be on the lookout for that 1, 2. I usually can get it on the 1 now when I feel like, ooh, that's them telling me a message. But the 1, 2 will come anyway. And the 2 then ends up coming as a confirmation that I was smart about getting on my message from the 1. So when you're hearing, you're getting a message or an opportunity from the universe, take it. You're probably only going to get one more opportunity for that prayer or that, moment in time before it moves on to something else. Be on it, but not too on it. Yeah, I'm such a fucking overachiever, man. I have succeeded at everything that I've ever done in my life, professionally, writing comic books, making music, lots of stuff, or for comics, I should say, I've written for Marvel and DC, whatever, kind of like the watermarks of like, yeah, I'm a professional. I've been published in graphic novel form and blah, blah, blah. I've won awards for music and had music placed in film and TV, and for voiceovers, I'm very, very successful, especially like in my age bracket or whatever, of money. One of the more successful of my generation, and then very successful with hosting as well. I've been like just tons of networks and TV shows. However, my scale of success financially and whatnot with comics and music has not really been to my liking, especially considering the effort and the energy that I've put into it. But what I realized when I was awoken, in my early 30s, was that was the problem. I was putting too much energy. I was too on it. When I did voiceovers, I just showed up, was my nice, polite, friendly, charming self. I'm always trying to make people laugh and have a nice time wherever I go and make people comfortable. It just makes me more comfortable when I feel like other people are comfortable. So it's a little self-serving because I'm sensitive to other people's energy. So I like everybody to be feeling comfortable because then it's easier for me. But in general, that means that I go into situations and I'm pretty warm and friendly. And, and I always do my best. Best I can do. Give it my all. But to a certain degree, with music and comic books, I was giving it just a little bit more than my all because I wanted those two things more than those other things. Hosting came along and I got hired out of college as a host. And I was like, oh, well, this isn't what I want to do, but cool. And then I was making a lot of money as a host for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I worked for MTV. I worked for HBO and Fuse, but only for like a day, I think, for fucking Fuse. What is some of the companies that I worked for? AOL Music's Top 11 Countdown. There was a bunch of companies that I worked for over that time, but some of them I worked for extended periods of time. It was very lucrative for me, certainly more so than how much energy and money and effort I was putting into music. And then voiceovers came along, and voiceovers work so well for me because, as I've said, I'm a little shy, and not being on camera, being in a voiceover booth, that worked so much better for me. I like that a lot better. And I was just more comfortable and able to just be my silly self and, get the type of voices that they needed and give the energy to it. And I didn't feel like anybody was watching me or judging me or whatnot. And I became a really good actor while I was in the voiceover booth for like a decade, doing tons of auditions in New York first and then in Los Angeles. And, it was a huge success for me. I mean, I was making eventually, I think, was making like my first 6 figures maybe with hosting. Maybe at some point, or maybe I was making more like in like the 60s, 70s, thousands or whatever. But voiceover changed all that really quickly, and I was making 6 figures, for years at a time. I've got 4 kids, and sort of built a life around. That's what I did, and I made a lot of money doing it. I was very good at doing it. I would show up, I'd do a good job. I worked with my voice a lot. I'd spent a lot of time getting good at that, and there you go. And when I had this like spiritual experience, they basically went, you are on it with voiceovers because you're on it with everything. But when it's something that you really care about, whether it be a person, a relationship, whatever, you're too on it. And when it comes to music, when it comes to comics, you're too on it. And I just went, fuck, because I could totally see that as a pattern. That was very obvious. Everything that I was really that much passionate about and like on, but I was more on those things, and I did not have as much success. I was less on these other things, and I had great success. And that is just safe to say, you showing up, giving a proper effort is it. That's the magic. It's not about overdoing it. It's not about underdoing it. It's just about showing up and doing it. Just put in the proper effort. You got to care, but don't care because, you have faith that the universe knows what it's doing. So you care about everything, essentially, but at the same time, you also don't care if this situation changes or anything changes because God's got your back. You're connected to God. God knows what you want, and God's not going out of its way to torture you for no reason. If there's something that's going on that's not right, it's probably there for a reason. That's it. It's pretty simple. Trust that any calamity you may find is a disguised blessing, and everything will unfold to your highest good. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Trust that any calamity you find is disguised blessing, and everything will unfold to your highest good. Let it come through inspiration and not effort. Yeah, so this is another thing. I said to my buddy Digger, who's working with me on this new magazine and with my business, he's working on the cover for our magazine for Sugar and Bones, which we'll be putting up a Kickstarter for probably in the next, just probably a few weeks into the new year. But actually, if you go to Kickstarter now-ish, I think you can already sign up for notifications. So that's cool. Sugar and Bones magazine. And I told him, I had a certain something that I wanted to do for the cover. And I said, you can go about this two ways. You can go about this either, you do the scientific approach and you can study all the other covers that are of a similar kind of ilk. And, and you can come to me and you'd be like, I think we should do something like this because scientifically speaking, this is an homage and that's an and XYZ equals, and give me a cover like that. Or if you get inspiration and you see something, from what we've talked about here, I trust your intuition more than anything. And that is what I'm going to trust for all of you guys. I'm going to recommend you do the thing the mechanical way, but look for the inspiration. When the inspiration comes, go with that. Put your energy into inspiration, not so much into effort. Try and make it all effortless. Try to start on a day when you feel like starting. Try to do it as it goes. Like I said in the past, if you study astrology and whatnot, you'll find out that the moon is waning and the stars are moving and a whole bunch of shit's going on that might be affecting your energy state, might be affecting your ability to get things done. So trust that if you do have something that mentally you'd like to do, eventually the day will come where your energy will be there to do it. I watched it with my best friend Aaron, to a certain degree. It was a very slow process for him to slowly get out his independent book, Kneel Before Doomface, which just raised like almost $19,000 on Kickstarter. But he wanted to do it. And slowly but surely, as the moon and the stars spun, new little bursts of efforting, and now the book's out. And, well, it's not out in people's hands yet, but now the Kickstarter's over. And he's made a bunch of money, and everything that needed to be done is done, and great success. So you can do the same thing. And that comes from a lot of giving and receiving, right? Giving and receiving. Okay. Let it come through inspiration and not effort. Butterfly effect is true for everyone. Something small you might do is only small from your limited perspective. In the flow of the universe, the flap of your wings will greatly change your reality. I said, what did you give? So what will you receive? And that's a big thing. Go to the prayer. Oh, it's raining. There's no rain, God, please. I'm giving me energy of there's no rain. God, thank you. There's gratitude, and God gives the gift, right? Or it's God, the universe, whatever you want to fucking call it. Giving and receiving. If you're putting out a lot of bad vibes, if you're putting out discouragement, if you're putting out a frowny face, if you're putting out unapproachable energy, if you're putting out a lot of mansplaining or womansplaining, which is just as bad, it's all equally shitty. Everybody
Try not to be such dicks to each other. But also, it's kind of shitty to put labels on things like that. Like, I hate that mansplaining thing because, like, I think maybe just one time somebody had, like, said that to me. And I was so hurt because I was like, that is so not true. I wasn't trying to, like, mansplain from the perspective of a man. I was just giving you my perspective just as a person. You like, and I'm kind of like hurt that you're thinking that, like, I'm a man now. Like, it's really, really hurt my feelings. And I do think it is often used like that in a diminishing capacity. So it goes both ways. There's a lot of just like stupid sort of gaslighting, insults that become like gaslighting, where it's like you're saying that, and like that's not really true. Like, I'm not a Nazi. Like, that's like fucking bullshit. Like, ugh. Like stupid sort of things. So don't be putting out that kind of garbage. You want to be putting out encouragement and support and good vibes. And if you find out that you've got a resting bitch face, change it. Go around and try to think of things that make you smile, and like fucking change all the wrinkles on your face by thinking positive things. You could do it. Pebble in the pond makes ripples that touch the surfaces of the entire pond. Yeah, your change of your spirit, your attitude about things, thinking about it, that like you're going to get the best of everybody in the world, it will change everything. You are projecting your universe. You're interacting with a multiverse of possibilities of other souls, and all the souls have multiple possibilities, and you get different versions of them based on how you show up and how you're showing up. You'll just adjust into a new configuration of their energy within the multiverse. So you're constantly moving within the multiverse and getting different reality based on the reality that you think you're going to get. So you got to be thinking the right reality, and eventually your thoughts will catch up to your reality. Patterning with crops. Think of yourself and your ideas and your plans as a crop you're growing and getting into harmony with nature. Like if you're a crop, there's a good time to plant you. There's a good time to water you. There's a good time to pull your fruit and your vegetables. You don't want to pull them too soon. You don't want to pull them too late. There's a great time. There's timing for everything. Everything is cycles, and you are just like that crop. And you got to think of yourself as a crop. And getting the most fruit from your yield is about getting on a good schedule for yourself in terms of what your energy and your output can and will be. Do unto others includes the planet. Yeah, doing unto others as you would do unto yourself. We're custodians of this planet. What we do to the animals, what we do to the plants, what we do to the rocks and the mountains and the trees, everything. It really is important. There are people in one of the countries in the Netherlands where they call in these beings that communicate with, these people who communicate with these elemental beings, and they will ask before major road projects what they should do before building. Should they build there or should they make an adjustment? And based on the guidance of these communicators, they'll change their plans to the building so that they don't disrupt what you might call like fairy mounds and things like that, which I know a lot of people think are very silly and very stupid, but very much a real thing, but just a bit different than we understand them or tend to understand them. And I'll talk about that stuff in the future one day, but not right now because there are way more important things than fucking fairy folk and elemental beings, even though it's an interesting subject, and I've had plenty of interactions with elemental beings, and they are very real. App called The Pattern. Oh, I wanted to recommend, there's a really cool app that you can put yourself on when it comes to astrology, and really good if you can get your time of your birth and whatnot in there. The more accurate you can put in your information, it will put you on a calendar, and every time you go into it, you're going to get accurate information about where you are in your life's cycle, and it was awesome. I was using, there was two of them. There was another one, I forget what it was called, but I quite enjoyed it. I was using it for a little while. Anyway, and a lot of members of my family were using it. That's how I got turned on to it. It was called The Pattern. I'm not being paid to say that they're not a sponsor or anything. So good and evil, cycling, highs will equal the lows, etc. but good does win in the very end. Yeah, well, everything's always modulating higher, but good and evil are basically doing a dance. A lot of the dance includes a perspective dance where the good becomes evil and the evil becomes good, and like things just kind of keep turning and changing and dancing around. But ultimately, in the end, good does rule out, because the higher understanding is that everything is one, and, that every sort of damage to the one has to be reconciled. And we don't want to just be in a same cycle of reconciliation. We want to move on to higher levels of consciousness. So, of course, we've got to move past this reconciliation and stop damaging ourselves by damaging the one. What's possible in your world? Don't be afraid to have ridiculous dreams or imagine seemingly impossible possibilities. I talked about this a little bit in last week's episode. Yeah, man. Inception. Dream a little bigger. Instead of coming out with a bigger fucking gun, like come out with a bazooka, come out with a tank, come out with Iron Man's armor, come out with Mjolnir, come out with the fucking power sword from He-Man. That's really dreaming a little bigger. Do not be afraid to have ridiculous dreams. You might be surprised, before you know it, what sort of things will align for possible worlds to open up for you. And it might be you're LARPing now all of a sudden, or whatever it might be. But, the just open the door to, why couldn't we fly in a mental projection reality? Why couldn't this? Why couldn't that? Is there a way to bypass this? Is there a way to bypass that? The answer is always yes. If you can believe that it's possible, the infinite consciousness will lead the way. And if you take the inspired action when the opportunities present itself, even the seemingly impossible may become possible for you. Dream you refuse to dream is the only dream that won't come true. The belief you refuse to hold is the only reality you will never live. There's a beautiful perspective in a movie that I love. It's a good recommendation around Christmas time here. It's a beautiful movie. It was made fun of on Mystery Science Theater, but I really think it's a great movie and has some really beautiful songs in it, and is worth your time. It's called The Christmas That Almost Wasn't. And there's a lovely scene where the dickhole prune, who's taken away Santa's house and Mrs. Claus's house, and he's like their landlord, and he's just a fucking rotten guy. And he goes on this diatribe about how rotten he is, how much he hates them, and he hates kids, and he hates Christmas, and just hates everybody. And the first thing out of Mrs. Claus's mouth is, "Oh, you poor man." And what did we say earlier about not taking things personally? That you can learn so much from the other side of things and see so much. And, from her place of gratitude and giving and faith and love, she just felt terrible for this man who was holding this perspective. And ultimately, to not be captured and eclipsed by a perspective like Prune's, you must be Mrs. Claus and never believe their perspective, but believe, "Oh, you poor person, for holding such a terrible, low-vibrating perspective that is going to keep you down." This is like the if it was the case of the guy going out with the girl and she thinks he's going to, if he was holding the higher perspective, he could save himself from her worry. He could overcome her worry. He could change her vibration. And this ultimately does happen in Christmas That Almost Wasn't. They ultimately do change Prune's vibration, even though they don't say it like that. Anyway, getting towards the end of my notes here and getting towards the end of the show. This is great. If you're not listening to my music show, All Your Favorite Bands Suck, every Monday, I'm on episode 52 this coming week. I think I'm doing Blink 182. I did Power Man 5000 last week. Tons of humor bands, metal bands, rock bands, ska bands, all sorts of shit. But if you want to get into some cool new bands, there's there's their names, and you go, cool, and listen, and it's like, 45 minutes to an hour of me gushing about the band. And then every Wednesday and Saturday, of course, I got my geek culture show, Cool's Geek Alive. Hope you're listening to that one. Every Saturday, I do picks for movies and TV shows that are great to check out. Not even necessarily geek culture only, but the most entertaining and great entertainment that I can get my hands on. I recommend to you only that. I never review shit that is like, well, let me tell you why this kind of sucks. Like, I only tell you that things are great, or I don't mention it at all. Anyway, back to the end of the show here. Let's see. So what good have I done by meeting darkness with more darkness? Yeah, I had a perspective about, we talked about this last week, that I could get the best out of a Nazi, that the spirit world was talking to me about that, saying, you could have a positive effect on him and allow him to have a positive effect on you in some way. Even a bad person on one level has good qualities on another level that might rub off on you, and you could be of benefit to them. You guys don't have to fight. You can be of benefit to each other. And what good have I done in the past meeting darkness with more darkness? Definitely changed my mind about how often I was going to meet a vicious attack with a vicious attack, or meet unkindness with more unkindness. Sometimes I feel that that's the right thing to do, because I feel that the person is being unconsciously very rude, and that nobody is allowing them to see themselves. They're allowing them to be ruder and ruder, and sometimes you have to reflect back at them the level of energy that they're putting out. And but I'm definitely not jumping into the darkness really and trying to fight, or I would match people's anger before. Definitely not going to do that. So, don't let society's rules, the box, limit what you are allowing for in your life. My friend recently said of me that he was talking to another friend. He's like, "You're gonna love this guy." My friend, he's like, he does not think based on the constraints of normal reality. And that really was a sweet compliment coming from my friend, especially, who's a really wonderful, brilliant artist. And him seeing that, I do not think based on the grid that most people are using. I think from a different standpoint that is more based on consciousness and how the mind of God is operating and how things in general are operating. This way of thinking has allowed me to open a lot of doors. And, you can't let the norm be the norm for you. You have to find what is right. You have to use your intuition to find the invisible rail that will lead you to a much higher mind about everything that you're dealing with in your reality right now. And let's see. To wrap this up, we got don't let society's rules. I said the box. So yeah, you got to think outside the box. Fuck the box. Don't get specific. Here's another thing. Now, you might be a psychic, and sometimes you see things, you see a person, you see a place. If that's you, I'm not talking to you, because you may have a very specific thing in mind, and that's okay when you're being haunted by the specific thing. You don't have to dissolve your specific image that you're seeing. But if you're not that person, don't paint the picture of, case in point, there's somebody, the girl that I love, the girl that I want to marry, the girl of my dreams, she has red hair. I didn't know that. But I didn't tell God that they had to be a brunette, or they had to be blonde, or they had to be this, or they had to be that. I had never actually dated a person who had red hair before. I don't have any problems with red hair whatsoever. But had I been blocking myself and putting together a person who had brown hair and a certain whatever, I might have blocked the boat, because when I met her years ago now, she was a friend. It was like we were meeting because I was looking for a friend, and I fell in love with her. But if I had in my mind that it's a brown-haired person or it's a blonde-haired person, they look like this, that cookie cutter of what it was supposed to be would have blocked out the possibility of me to go, hey, this person seems like everything I've ever wanted. I'd like to get to know them better. So, that thing of specifics, you want to open yourself up to money. I've got money. Money's coming. Money's here. Don't say money's coming. Go with the money's here. Go with the I've got money. But when you get to the point of, well, where's the money coming from? It doesn't matter. It could fall out of the fucking sky. You could find it in your floorboards. You could get a great new big job. It doesn't have to only be because your uncle who's got a lot of money died and you got an inheritance. The one way in which you can see to make money is not the only way to make money. So don't be super specific. The bravest are always safe. Yeah, it really is true. The bravest among us are always the safest. The more faith and bravery that you can have in the face of everything that you might see that is challenging, that is scary, that seems, the brink of World War III right now and nuclear holocaust and all this shit. Don't get wrapped up in that. The bravest people are always the safest people. Have faith. And if you find that you're unsafe or whatever, don't go back to feeling like, oh, well, something happened that made me unsafe and now I know that I'm unsafe. No, just be like the person who says, I'm never sick. Occasionally you will get sick, but you go right back to saying, I'm never sick. You keep your right mind about this stuff. Now, there is a whole nother show worth of how do you apply this information, specifically the laws of attraction. How do you attract things with your health, with politics, with family, with romance, finances, everything, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to do a nice long show on that, kind of getting into these things. I think a third, kind of episode to just continue this, because I know people love the law of attraction and there's just so much to learn here about how reality is working. And it's just such a great subject to talk about, which is why these episodes have been, over my usual hour, because there's a lot to say. And it took me 2 hours to get through all my notes that I made for last week's show. Or more than that, 2 hours and almost 2 hours and a half. Anyway, I love you guys for joining me again. I hope you will join me next fucking Friday as I come at you with another. And like I said, I'm going to continue on this as we talk about, health things and, some specific application of bringing the law of infinite creation into your life and utilizing that meaning of life, that giving and receiving. If you're out there and you've been given a lot, learn to receive. If you're out there and you've been receiving a lot, learn to give. Wherever you're at in your journey, I wish you love and peace, guys. And I hope you'll join me next time. Oh, wait a second. Before I say the closing line, I want to say we finally have my song back. I guess it gave me an opportunity to change the song. We were supposed to have an intro song that was by my band, Blacklight District. It's a little side project that I have. You can find it under Jesse Blaze and Spotify and whatnot. But this is Symptoms, the first track off of the EP that we put out. And I love this song. And originally it was going to be the 6th track on the record, Bizarro. But I think the universe gave me an opportunity to switch it to Symptoms. So we're going to close with it right now, and we're going to be opening every show with it from now on. This is Symptoms from Blacklight District, and I hope you'll join me again next Friday, on another fucking awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. Love you guys. Peace.
There's something in the water. There's something in the air. The proof is all around us. The symptoms are everywhere. It's not a matter of time. Sure as the blaze in your eyes, I sense a subtle shift. Instincts I can't resist. Weary of wolves in disguise. Drunk on a gallon of wine. Red as the rivers you dried. Bad apples spoil the punch. Bruises and rotten fronts. You've got a thirst you can't hide. There's something in the water. There's something in the air. The proof is all around us. The symptoms are everywhere. There's something in the water. There's something in the air. The proof is all around us. The symptoms are everywhere. Might be a fault of design. A bark as bad as its bite. Fooled by a flash of teeth. Sharp tongues that lie beneath. Words that could eat you alive. There's something in the water. There's something in the air. The proof is all around us. The symptoms There's something